Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Bobby Parker from Beyond Clean. I just want to express my deepest gratitude for you choosing to kick off your weekend with us and all of these excellent speakers. You are 100% making our day, and we thank you for that. I also want to thank our event sponsor, One Tray IST, for helping make this education today possible. Our next speaker, Calvin MacDougall, is a Managing Director and Sterile Processing Project Consultant at Colmed Products. He's spent the last 7 years in OR and sterile processing departments across the country, providing hands-on consultations. Calvin takes an innovative approach to solving current industry challenges and strives to enhance a department's surgical outcome. Now, with surgical volumes and case complexity on the rise, the increased demand for sustainable instrument logistics systems has many SPDs reevaluating their current case cart system. Calvin's here to outline the key considerations someone has to follow in order to successfully implement an effective and budget-friendly case cart system. So get ready to discover if your case carts are the right size for your department needs. Join me in welcoming Calvin MacDougall.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Beyond the Shelf virtual conference. I feel quite limited as to what I could say, especially after the first 4 great episodes, but I'm quite excited to discuss case carts and how to get the most out of any case cart workflow. Before I start, I just wanted to kind of give a huge thanks to the Beyond Clean team for putting this event on. Bobby and Brett and Hank and Melanie and everyone at the Beyond Clean team, you do an amazing thing for this industry, and not only from an educational standpoint, but the awareness and voice of sterile processing, your impact is incredible. So privileged to be on here today. Case carts are obviously a big part of sterile processing. They're the workhorses from a logistical standpoint, and there's so much more, in my opinion, there's so much more than just a standard stainless steel box on wheels or a standard delivery cart. I think it's pretty clear that the logistical challenges in sterile processing aren't going away, and to be honest, they probably are getting more challenging over the last 5 years. And today I just want to leave a few kind of key points of how we can improve your case cart workflow. So a couple of the key objectives of today's session. We wanted to discuss the logistical challenges sterile processing departments are facing and how it pertains to case carts. Here we'll kind of go over things like off-site sterile processing, both on a temporary and a permanent basis, and the different standards that need to be maintained in both of those areas. We'll also discuss how to overcome workaround limitations in your case cart workflow. That could be anything from a dumb waiter to a lack of cart washer space, or just the general, even the general storage of the actual case carts. Next, we want to discuss the key considerations for implementing an effective case cart system. Here we'll include things like logistics and ergonomics and the case cart selection process. We want to think of things like robotics and the impact they've had from a logistical standpoint, and how to future-proof your case cart system. Lastly, we want to kind of provide strategies to using data to right-size your case cart inventory and budget for new purchases. So this will include a number of things as to kind of like the total number of case carts needed, and then what data to look at. And lastly, we'll get into the different options for budgeting and speak a little bit as to capital versus operational expense when purchasing new case carts. So a quick introduction to case carts. I assume everybody here knows what a case cart is, but they're obviously used to transport instruments to and from the reprocessing area, and they're often used to organize the instruments per procedure, and the ultimate goal is to protect the instruments during transport. The biggest differences in case carts, you obviously have an open case cart system and a closed case cart system. Open case carts are ideal for general storage, linens, and distributing supplies and whatnot, often used in a where there's a sterile core, or where the core sterile room is directly on connected to the operating room. Closed case carts are obviously ideal for maintaining sterility, and they're also ideal for transporting biohazard instruments anywhere throughout the facility. In terms of design, we're going to obviously dig into this quite a bit more in the next slides, but I'm a firm believer there's no one size fits all in our industry, and that goes along with case carts. We want to design the things to think about when we're designing the case cart and how it can be best suited for your process. So in terms of the logistical challenges in the sterile processing, they're real. They haven't gone away, and they're probably not going away. So I guess every week I'm in a sterile processing department, and can't tell you how many of them are feeling maxed out or feeling that they're at overcapacity. And there's plenty of examples of sterile processing departments that are on different floors, or they're far away from the surgery, sometimes even multiple buildings away from the actual OR. But I wanted to kind of give an example of a story of a hospital that we were at recently. They were a large hospital, and they had this sterile SPD department was in the basement, and then the main ORs were up on the third floor. And in this particular hospital, they had a small OR core, which stored a lot of the last minute stuff, things that needed during surgery. It stored about 30% of their total storage was in the OR core. And what that is just a room that's surrounded by the operating rooms, and that way you have direct access to your storage room. And then the rest of the 70% of the storage was done in the basement in the sterile processing department. And this particular hospital was looking to switch from an open case cart system to a fully closed case cart system. And they were getting a lot of negative feedback, particularly from the OR, neuro team, and robotic teams. Every closed case cart that they had tried couldn't fit all the needed instruments, and they didn't have any extra room in the OR for multiple case carts. So I guess an example of that was their logistical challenge is switching from a open case cart system to a closed case cart system, and not being able to fit all their instruments into a traditional closed case cart. So with our customization process, we built what we call a robotic case cart, and in this particular example, it increased their total capacity of the storage capacity inside the case cart by 40%. And the difference between a standard closed case cart and a robotic closed case cart is just an extra 4 inches of depth. And it allows the instruments to be kept front in versus side to side. And that in that particular example, the robotics team and the neuro team were able to fit all their instruments in one case cart versus bringing two closed case carts into the OR. So just a kind of a quick example of how the right case cart can have a huge challenge on a huge impact on the logistical challenges. And this particular hospital not only accomplished their goal in switching from closed case carts to from open case carts to a closed case cart system, but they were able to reduce the total number of carts needed, and thus increasing the total storage space they had for their case carts. So case carts are they're designed to protect your instruments. First, that's keeping it clean. Case carts have to protect instruments from outside contamination, but case carts itself should be able to be cleanable. Obviously, case carts need to be need to be cleaned after transporting biohazard instruments. I was at a customer a little bit ago where they had an old cart washer that didn't tilt, and they were having issues with their case carts collecting water and fluid at the bottom corners of the case cart. for that particular application, we built a sloping bottom, which allowed the carts to fully drain and not hold any excess fluid in the bottom corners, or any fluid in the bottom corners of the case cart. Another thing when it comes to sterility maintenance of challenges is preventing holes. Your case cart should be designed in a way that protects and wrap trays and sterile packages. A couple easy things to consider when in this area is to have pull-out shelves, so instruments can be easily accessed versus having to slide the instrument across the shelf and pull out to unload the cart. Another thing I always recommend is having a looped wire shelf. That kind of prevents any sharp edges from the sides of the shelf or the front or the back of the wire shelf. Having a looped edge prevents any there's no edges at all on the whole wire shelf. So I guess the big question is how to implement a case cart system. And there's three key things we're going to focus on as we go through this presentation. And no matter what your situation there, whether you're using offsite, whether you have an offsite reprocessing center, or whether you're temporarily in construction and you have a trailer reprocessing, there's three considerations for implementing any case cart system. First is going to be logistics, and that's going to we're going to get into things like offsite sterile processing, transporting case carts over long distances, whether it's long hallways or multiple floors. The next thing is going to be ergonomics, and case carts obviously play a big burden for our employees on ergonomic standpoints, but it's also a huge opportunity to improve ergonomics, and there's a lot of things we'll discuss as to ways to improve the overall ergonomics of your case cart workflow. And then finally, we want to talk about the case cart sizes. It's so important to get the right size case cart for your application. Just going back to that the robotic instruments example earlier, how 4 inches have made such a large impact on the overall workflow of their case cart system. So in terms of the logistics, the requirements to transport your case carts. When planning to transport instruments to and from surgery, there are some industry guidelines that need to be followed. OSHA standards for biohazard instruments requires that instruments are contained and in a leak-proof, fully enclosed either container or enclosed cart. So if you're using an open case cart system, sets must be individually contained in either a container or a bin to prevent any leaking. Your cart must be covered during transport, whether it's a cart cover or either reusable or disposable cart cover. And then lastly, the cart needs to be labeled for biohazard. So biohazard sign must be when transported on solid instruments. I've seen some facilities use like a disposable cart cover that's red and it's clearly marked biohazard. And then if you have a closed case cart system, you obviously don't need to put them in any rigid containers because the whole case cart itself is enclosed. In terms of instrument containment for sterile, when the instruments are sterilized and cleaned, carts must be enclosed when transporting through unrestricted areas. That's just general hallways of the hospital, and that means that you can't put any instruments on top of the case cart when transporting through the hallways. In terms of the biohazard label, OSHA also requires that contaminated instruments are labeled biohazard during transport, and that's also spelled out in the AAMI ST79 guidelines. Labels are used to prevent anyone accidentally opening a used case cart or a dirty case cart in a clean OR, and at the same time, they're to prevent anyone from rolling in a clean, sterile case cart into decontamination, where the instruments would have to be reopened and re-cleaned. surveyors will often be checking for biohazard labels. They'll be checking for the accuracy. Often you'll see a case card that's marked as dirty, that's in a clean room, and it is actually clean. So it's important to, if you're using, especially if you're using a sticker system for your case cards, to remove the stickers when the case cards are actually cleaned. One thing we do recommend for any new case cards is to include a built-on clean dirty indicator. It allows obviously easy to maneuver from clean to dirty, and you don't run the risk of not forgetting to remove a sticker. All case cards need to be cleaned between use. Many departments use this with either a cart washer or which obviously disinfects and cleans the case cards. And then if you are wiping them or manually cleaning them, it's very important to obviously use a disinfector when cleaning manually. After washing your case card, you need to make sure that it's totally dry, and you want to make sure that there's no puddles or any liquid inside the case card. And so just like the requirements for sterile storage, it also pertains when transporting sterile items. A couple guidelines to be aware of. You need a solid bottom shelf, and this is spelled out in the AAMI ST79 guidelines. A bottom shelf of a cart moving or storing sterile supplies must be solid, and this is obviously to protect clean supplies from being contaminated when dusting or cleaning the floors. And it also protects the floor from any leaks of when biohazard instruments are being transported. And just like for sterile storage, all case cards should be at a minimum of 8 inches off the ground. Very standard in any case card, but something to keep aware of. So in terms of logistics, offsite sterile reprocessing is becoming more and more popular. It's becoming more and more popular in healthcare facilities that are part of a large network, and they're looking for ways to save on capital or operational cost. A couple standards to think about when considering offsite reprocessing. This is obviously for a permanent basis, not versus we'll touch about the temporary offsite reprocessing in a minute, but for permanent reprocessing, you want to have a dedicated vehicle, and each vehicle must be separated from clean items to dirty items. So you can't mix and match, have clean case cards in the same vehicle as dirty case cards. Items should be transported according to the DOT regulations, and then the trucks and vehicles themselves must be cleaned between each transport to avoid any cross-contamination. In terms of the environment, even if a truck is temperature controlled, which is a requirement, it's important to think of the loading docks and other areas that aren't temperature controlled, and how long your case cards are, or how quick your case cards are moving into the temperature controlled trucks. It's also very important on the dirty side to the time between your instruments are being used to when they're being cleaned. If you're transporting the instruments before cleaning them, they'll need to be pre-cleaned at the point of use to keep the instruments moist during transport. And I always recommend, or ideally you want your instruments to be fully cleaned before transport, and that way they're arriving at the reprocessing center clean and ready to be reprocessed. So in terms of temporary offsite reprocessing, this is applications for construction projects. When if you're transitioning from reprocessing in the facility to a processing trailer. Couple things as far as the cart itself to be think of. I'll touch on it in a minute, but having a sealed case cart prevents any debris or dust to enter the cracks of the case cart around the doors. It also is important to make sure your case cart's built for going over the road conditions. Casters, especially if it's a cold environment, if you have plastic casters, you don't want run the risk of a caster breaking during going back and forth to the reprocessing truck. So whenever we're talking about off-site reprocessing, it's very important to use a sealed case cart, or what some people call an over-the-road case cart. And the language on this is kind of confusing because many facilities use closed case carts, but the big difference between a sealed case cart and a closed case cart is what it sounds like. A sealed case cart, the doors are sealed, and if it's okay, I'm gonna play a quick video of our colleague Tim that kind of expresses the difference between a sealed case cart and a traditional closed case cart.
Hello, my name is Tim with Coleman Products. I'm here to show you the different configuration for a sealed case cart, which is used when sterile processing is done at an offsite facility. Obviously, an offsite facility has additional challenges you need to take into account when it comes to the case cart. You're traveling through dirtier areas of the hospital. You have to worry about dust, contaminants, getting into the case cart. And then you also have the durability side of things. When your carts are going to be traveling onto a truck, you need to be sure that it's built and constructed with higher quality materials. So the other thing is keeping your sterile goods clean, and obviously complying with the DOT regulations of transporting biohazard goods within a case cart. So one of the differences in the locking system, you have a twist lock here. This is going to have pins that go into the top and bottom of the housing of the case cart. And then the seal of the doors is very important. You have a full perimeter gasket, which is keeping your sterile goods clean and containing the biohazard goods when you're transporting it dirty. Moving over to the casters, these are fully stainless steel casters. You want to make sure you don't have any plastic in the casters, as you have, colder temperatures where plastic can get brittle. And this is an 800-pound rated caster, and you obviously want to make sure your casters are going to be good for the life of the case cart as well, so you don't have to worry about changing those. This particular configuration has a directional lock on this caster here. And then the other thing, when you're closing the case cart, you have you want to make sure the pins latch into the top and bottom of the cart. And obviously, with the durability side of things, you have the full perimeter bumper, so you're covering not just the corners, but also the center parts and of the sides and the front and back, which is the weakest part of the case cart. That's all for today.
So that's I hope that came through okay, but that's kind of it sums it up from the logistical standpoint of implementing a case cart system. Please feel free to drop in any questions or if you want me to go into anything in more detail towards at the Q&A at the end. The next part of that we have here is the ergonomics and the what to think about from an ergonomic standpoint when implementing a case cart system. So the first step is to plan your route, and that's if possible, what you want to do is you want to limit any extra movement of the sterile supplies. So I know a lot of facilities that have a sterile core where the bulk of their instruments are picked in sterile processing, and then the case cart goes into the sterile core, and the last minute items are added to the case cart in the sterile core before going into the OR, and that's that's okay. Just if possible, you want to limit as much extra movement of the actual sterile supplies in the case cart, and how much the carts are open and closed before sending off to the OR. The next thing is you want to know your obstacles. So in terms of things that between the path of transportation. So you want to know whether there's any elevators or dumbwaiters that you're going through, and what the surfaces are. And there's kind of those are kind of two main points from the ergonomic standpoint to think of. Next slide here goes over the tow hitch system, which has been around for a long time. It's not exactly a new system, but it's a great solution whenever staff are required to transport more than one case cart to the OR. I'm going to show you a quick video and then come back as to I guess this next video kind of shows you a what its tow hitch system looks like, and then how in this example we're at a demo we're testing out turning a corner with about a dozen case carts. So I'm just going to play another quick video if that's all right. Well, obviously that's just a demo, and no facility is going to require you to pull 12 case carts. But I wanted to show that because it shows you how the case cart system can, whether you're using a cart tugger, or whether you're just pulling one or two carts, how the tow hitch will follow a path, and you're able to turn corners safely without the case carts swinging left or right. So the way that works is through a directional lock on the caster. You want to lock one caster directionally, and that allows the case cart to follow the path that the first cart is being pulled. So tow hitch system is not something new, but it's something that we always encourage. It's not an expensive option, and it can make a very large impact on especially when you're trying to when you're only bringing one or two carts to the OR, and you're trying to push one cart and pull the other cart. It's a tow hitch can make a very large impact. So in terms of ergonomics, a few of the key safety features that can make a pretty large impact on the safety of your case carts. Here we have recessed handles, and this does two things. It allows the handle be positioned at the appropriate height position for, especially on taller carts. You can put the handle in the middle of the case cart, right? So staff don't have to reach above their shoulders or to push or to reach the handles. It also, having a handle that doesn't stick out, obviously there's a lot of protection. You don't have to worry about getting bumped by the handle or being bruised by the actual handle itself. Next thing is roll-out shelves. We touched on it earlier, but the importance of having shelves that come all the way out of the case cart, it not only has its impact on it from a sterility point, but it obviously makes unloading the case carts and unloading the sterile items a lot easier on the staff. Bumpers are quite obvious with the protection they have. Not only do they protect the cart, they also protect surrounding objects, walls, and staff from the not that a bumper is soft, but it'll protect the cart from bashing into a wall or a staff member. And then lastly, the cool touch handles. These are becoming very popular. They're used to when unloading the case carts from a hot washer. The kind of an alternative to reusing the oven mitts that never get cleaned between users. And they're one thing when you are using cool touch handles is you want to make sure your cool touch handle is sealed and no debris can get inside the actual handle itself. It is plastic, so you want to make sure it's easy to clean and it's not not going to catch any unwanted substances right where the staff will be touching. Again, that's kind of the overview for the ergonomics side of things. Next, we're going to get into the sizing of the case cart and different custom solutions, going back to the robotic case cart and how a little difference in sizing can kind of make a huge difference in your total case cart workflow. If you have any questions on the ergonomic side, please drop them in the comments, and we'll make sure to get to them at the end. So when you're looking at cart sizes, there's kind of the first two things you want to look at is optimizing your space. So you want to look at the limiting factor. Is it going to be your dumbwaiter size? Is it going to be the maybe the staging of clean carts? Is it going to be the cart washer capacity? You want to look at what the limiting factor of your case cart is. And it could be even the limit of space in the OR, whether you can get one cart in the OR that fits all your instruments, or whether you have to bring in two carts that are smaller, and whether they have the space for two carts in the OR. And then the next thing you want to look at is what you're storing. So I'm a huge fan of having, I'm not a huge fan of having 5 or 6 different types of carts. This tends to get kind of confusing and disorganized. Many facilities will use the next cart that's available, and if it's an odd size, it can cause confusion. What we often recommend is using a general cart, which will cover 80% of the applications, and then having 1 or 2 specialty carts similar to the robotic case cart that is ideal for that particular specialty. That can also be ortho or total, some of the larger procedure carts. So robotic case carts, I know I talked about it earlier, but we've been talking about it quite a bit during this event. But robotics have had a large impact on the logistical standpoint of sterile processing, and it's so important to in that story earlier about that the facility having a cart that's specifically designed for transporting robotic instruments. It's a robotic instrument is 27 inches long, so the tray is about 30 inches long. So to have a cart that's deep enough to keep the instruments facing front to back versus side to side is so important. It's also I've seen facilities that don't have a deep case cart for robotics, and they're putting in their case carts, their instrument trays sideways, and then they're mixing in the peel packs and salt goods around the trays, and you run the risk of damaging your sterility on some of those items when you're mixing them in with the instruments, and it's doesn't fit properly. So that's we always recommend when implementing a robotic case cart system to think about the case cart. Whenever you're implementing a robotic system, to think about the case carts and kind of the whole path of the reprocessing for the larger instruments. And this is kind of leads to the next topic a bit, but whenever you're implementing a robotics, many of our customers have lately been putting robotics in the robotic budget, putting case carts in the robotic budget, and it's a small line item, but it can have a large impact when you are implementing the robotics to have a case cart that is designed and ready to transport your larger instruments. So lastly, I want to talk about the budgeting besides implementing a case cart system, the importance to and what data to look at when deciding how many case carts are needed. The first step is you want to figure out how often you can reuse your case cart. So you want to think about things like how far your case cart have to go and how to each facility, how often your case carts can be reused. Will it? Some facilities can get use the same cart twice a day. I've haven't seen very many facilities that can use a cart more than that can use a cart 3 times a day, but you want to think about how many times you can reuse your case cart. And then when you are requesting case cart, you always want to think of it in terms of your busiest day. You never want to be in a situation where you're planning for your typical day, and then on your busy days, your staff are forced to improvise or use an open case cart or a utility cart instead of a closed case cart system when you're using a closed case cart system. The other thing I want to talk about is capital versus operational expense. Many facilities consider case carts as a capital expense, and that's when they purchase them in bulk. Lately, it's becoming a lot more popular for facilities to, obviously this depends on the hospital situation, but to purchase case carts on a bi-monthly or a monthly basis, just 1 or 2 carts. So especially if you're replacing a large fleet of case carts, it doesn't give you one large capital whack. It can be put into the operational budget. So that kind of obviously depends on your facility, but it is an option that many of our customers have been doing. In terms of maintaining your case cart system, so now hopefully we went over the key points to implement a system, and you want to see what you want to maintain that system and keep it working at the highest capacity. So preventative maintenance is very popular. It obviously limits the number of case carts that are down for repair. It limits the need to repair your case carts, and it makes them last longer. Many companies have, whether it's Biomed or whether it's the actual vendor doing the preventive maintenance of your case carts, they have the case cart manufacturers should be able to provide instructions on how to maintain your case carts. The total cost of ownership is over the lifespan of a cart. This is obviously it's not always the cheapest model to go with the cheapest case cart. You want to look at a case cart that's built right, and it's going to last you 10, 15 years in your department, and you're not going to have to constantly replace parts, and it's not going to break down on you. And this kind of leads into this last point of bolt-on construction. This is becoming a lot more popular. It's something we implemented in the last couple of years, where a lot of the replacement or a lot of parts on the case cart, like your doors or your bumper or your handles, a lot of the parts that get extra wear and tear are bolted on versus standard welded construction. And in terms of a strength of the case cart, it's just, the case cart doesn't affect the total strength of the case cart, but it allows biomed facilities to easily replace if a door gets hit in transit, or if a bumper gets hit in transit. It allows the bumper to be replaced versus replacing the entire case cart. So I've been at many facilities where you see a caster, that are bashed in, or you see a bumper falling off, or you see on some of the older carts you see a handle that's loose, or it's falling off. And having a bolt-on construction makes Biomed's job a lot easier, and allows them to replace just those parts rather than the entire case cart. That kind of concludes our session today. Obviously, the clinical findings critical findings we want to. When implementing a case cart system, you should optimize it around your workflow. You want to think of things like the ergonomics and logistics, and you want to make sure your case cart is designed for your application. And lastly, you want to plan out for in terms of budgeting to sustain your volume growth in surgery, and make sure that you have the right number of case carts for your day-to-day and your busiest days of surgery. So that takes us at the end, Bobby. I don't know if you.
Yeah, good job, Calvin. Thanks for walking us through that. I appreciate it. We definitely had a lot of engagement in the Q&A section, and so I want to go back and revisit a couple of things with you. There were a couple of people who were intrigued, like I was, about the sealed case carts. Not something that I've worked with at one of my facilities, and a couple of people were asking about the standards on that. And I was just going to ask you and your team to maybe help clarify a little bit. Is that something that is required for a department to do, or is it just a good idea? What are maybe some of the benefits of considering a sealed case cart over just using a traditional closed case cart?
Yeah, that's a great question. Lee, you have probably better experience than I do on different sealed case cart applications or over in. I don't know if you want to. Are you on?
Yeah, I am, Calvin. That's a good question, Bobby. So the requirements as far as a sealed case cart, when you're transporting off-site, as I understand it, are more DOT requirements versus like an AAMI. And I know it does vary state to state on the DOT, but when you're transporting biohazard goods, you're required to have a sealed cart so that if there was ever an accident or anything ever happened, the cart got tipped over, nothing would leak out.
Okay.
Is that what you were, does that answer your question?
Yeah, and just in my review of the AAMI guidelines, as well as some folks who put in here in the Q&A, like finding requirements or evidence based on requiring a sealed cart for transport, it's difficult to see that specific requirement. But I could certainly see how having a gasket around the door might help prevent, dust from invading in through the door cracks or vice versa, contamination inside the cart contaminating the truck. And so they're just wondering, is this more of an improvement and good idea kind of thing, or if it would be a requirement that a department would be at risk for being cited for not using?
So I don't think it's a requirement that you would be cited for on a department level. I know of one instance where there was an accident and a cart had tipped out of the back of a truck actually, and the driver of the truck was cited or he was ticketed from the DOT. So it is more around the driving, the road aspect, I guess.
For sure. Yeah, it's an interesting world out there. This morning during our first session, Barbara Harmer brought up the development of the new AAMI document, the TIR 109, and all I can say is I know that's definitely needed because, like you guys mentioned in the presentation, just organizations are really looking into that, trying to find ways to be more efficient, ways to save money, and the guidance out there for sterile processing departments right now seems to be a bit limited. And so definitely eager to see what comes from that document. Another great question that came through in the presentation, somebody mentioned, piggybacking off your comment, Calvin, about the case cart that was pooling water in it, that they recently installed some filters on their cart washer to eliminate watermarks, and just wanted to know if you had any additional comments on the risks involved with water sediment as well as, pooling water inside of case carts on the other side of the cart washer.
That's interesting. I know of some customers that had aluminum carts where the cart was over time would change color versus a stainless steel case cart, and that it just looks dirty. I assume it's clean when it goes through the cart washer, but over time it never gives that clean polished look of a stainless steel cart. But I don't know. That doesn't really answer your question. I guess in terms of you mean water spots on the actual cart?
Yeah, water spotting and sediment, and if we need to punt this one to the infection preventionists at your local facility, like that's totally an acceptable answer. Just wanted to know if you had any further clarification about it.
Yeah. No, the other point is, and I remember you telling a story about the a cart collecting liquid inside, not only just at the bottom corners, but inside the actual case cart. I think you told the story about when you brought the cart through the hallway, all of a sudden it looked dry beforehand, and all of a sudden when you're bringing it through the hallway and bumps and whatnot, water came out of the actual case cart.
Yeah, it was the carts that we had at the facility that I managed. There was a rail that went along the ceiling of the case cart inside. And so you're right, whenever it would sit out in the cart storage area, it would appear dry. But then when you loaded up with case carts and started going over the door thresholds and kind of rumbling through the hallway, it would shake water loose from that rail and drip down onto them. So we had to implement kind of a bongo drum style quality check, like before you would pull a case cart, give a good whack on the top and see if any water dripped down. So.
Yeah, no, that leads to actually a pretty key point when any manufacturer that's making these case carts should be considering. You don't want any areas that can collect water, not only at the bottom of the cart, but actually inside, up inside the case cart and in the doors, or like you said, you want to make sure that everything's sealed, or there's no spot for water to collect.
Yeah. With you all being a cart manufacturer, and you talked about preventative maintenance, do you all have any preference for who ought to be maintaining carts? I mean, everybody's doing something different, whether it's the OEM sends a representative out, or your instrument repair company does it, or Biomed does it, or facilities does it. I mean, does it really matter?
Not really. As long as they're actually maintaining it. Obviously, a manufacturer can do. We're going to do the preventive maintenance. We probably check a lot more and we know our carts, and we know we have the ability to fix any issue that could be arising, where a typical Biomed facility might not be able to do that. And that goes back to the bolt-on construction, designing your cart in a way that Biomed can maintain the carts is super important. Whether it's bolt-on, whether it's casters that can be easily replaced. But in terms of the actual structure of a case cart, we typically it's most common to have Biomed do the preventive maintenance on them. Not that we don't do it, but we'd like to design it in a way that they can do it, and then if there's any additional maintenance required, then we'd be happy to step in there.
Yeah, it's a good thing to think about, particularly if you're looking into case cart purchases. I remember as a sterile processing manager, the first batch of case carts that we ever purchased, we didn't get a voice in it. It was just they were picked for us. And because it was part of a system, and that was the case cart everybody was getting. And so I didn't get to look at, the manufacturer's user manual for the case carts until after we already had them. And the required maintenance for the casters was obscene. I don't remember the frequency, but they wanted them to be re-greased with a particular grease at a very frequent interval. And I showed it to my facilities team, and they said, we don't have the manpower to do this. I don't know what you're going to do, but there's no way we could keep up with that. Yeah. So then we ended up having an instrument repair company do it and take it out of our instrument repair budget. And it was just a pretty significant cost that nobody really expected or thought about ahead of time. So yeah, planning for that maintenance piece is important.
Yeah, that's a great point. And casters are something that many facilities have challenges with, and it's something you should not, from a case cart manufacturer standpoint, that's one area you should not cheap out on. It's the casters get the most, that's the part that touches the ground that most friction is on a case, the most pressure is on the caster itself, and it goes through cart washers. It's got to be a sealed caster. You don't want the cart washer to get inside and wreck your grease, and you want to make sure it's fully stainless steel so that you don't have to worry about the caster cracking over time. Or casters are nobody wants to push that shopping cart at the grocery store with a bad caster, and it's the same thing with case carts. You don't want to you want a good caster on your case cart.
Yeah. Somebody just asked, what's the general expected lifespan of a case cart, and is it actually cost effective in the long run to be replacing wheels and casters?
Good question, actually. I don't like to. I know a lot of people have to replace casters. That's we don't normally have to replace our casters. I know I'm biased because I think we do have the best design case cart, but if you get the right caster in the first place, you shouldn't have to replace it very often. And in terms of a total lifespan of a case cart, I've seen case carts last 10 years, 15 years, even longer. It really depends on obviously the logistical side of the facility. Over-the-road case carts would never last as long as a standard case cart used in a facility, just because of the extra wear and tear from leaving the facility and going on the truck and going outside. But it really depends on the particular application. If it's so that's kind of a hard general question to answer. But if the case cart's designed right for the application, you should get a long time out of it.
Yeah, that's helpful. The most recent comment in the Q&A box, I think, is really interesting. Nicholas said, for those of the audience out there with no cart washer, he was able to identify a healthcare supportive company that was able to come out and clean our case carts very thoroughly on a bi-yearly basis. They PM sticker the cart and come out looking brand new, and it's very effective for those that don't have a case cart and want to deep clean a couple times a year. It's a limited market of those who provide those types of services, though. I just think that's a really interesting call out. Obviously, you want the case carts to be cleaned in between every use. Like, we can't just choose not to clean them. But I haven't seen a case cart out there that is really designed in a way that would be easy to clean manually if you're just using purple top disinfectant wipes, being able to reach all the way into the corners every time. Or even if that's what the policy says you're going to do, if you actually observe the staff, is that really what's taking place every time?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Nicholas. Sorry, Lou, were you going to say something?
No, I agree. It's a really good point. Go ahead.
No, just on your point, Bobby, is no carts designed easy to clean. I've seen people manually wash them out or have a hose to wash them out, but if you don't have a cart washer, to have a biannually thorough cleaning on the case carts, I think it's a very good practice. There are with the shelves and whatnot, there's different things you can do to make them easier to clean, but to have a full clean out is a very good practice.
Yeah. Somebody added an additional question about the sealed case cart. We talked about the biohazard transport of it, and they were asking about the sterile transport of it and if that would impact the requirement for the truck to be temperature controlled and still be compliant. I'm assuming, guys, that I'd be correct in saying that, just because you have a sealed case cart, that would not invalidate the requirements to keep that in a controlled environment during transport, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah, that's still going to be an important piece of it. We've got time for a couple more. Is there a guideline for testing cart washers so we know carts are properly cleaned? I'm a traveler and I've been to facilities that do testing while others don't do testing. I guess that's more of a washer verification question than it is a case cart question. And so I'll add a couple of thoughts, and you guys feel free to jump in there if you have some as well from a cart perspective. The requirement for verifying washers, as I understand it right now, is related to instrument washers. And so anything that's going to be involved in cleaning your instruments, like an ultrasonic cleaner or a washer disinfector, anything that's going to be touching those instruments needs to be evaluated at least daily while they're in use. So if you're not running on the weekend, you don't have to test them on the weekend. And I believe that is the end of those requirements as it currently stands. So I don't think that there are any cart washer tests that have to be required, although I have seen some on the market that are more of just like a wetness and temperature test to make sure you're getting up to thermal disinfection temperatures and making sure that water can reach all the nooks and crannies of your case cart. So that can be a good test and challenge to put those in an area of the cart that are difficult to wash and see if your detergent is actually reaching those areas. One thing I will call out on there, though, is there is an increasing number of departments that are installing cart washers that have an instrument washing cycle. And so if you are washing instruments in that cart washer, or if you have the capability to do so, you've just turned that into a washer disinfector. And in that case, you do need to be testing that instrument cycle at a minimum.
That's good.
Yep. Seeing if there are any others that we've missed. Oh, one more. This always comes up in discussions around case carts, but particularly for departments that are picking supplies and instruments and then sending them to the OR. Do you all have any opinion in terms of setting up a successful case cart system to make sure that those carts arrive in the OR complete and haven't been robbed of their supplies along the way?
I'd say one quick way is to all case carts should have a lock on them, where you put a disposable like a zip tie lock type thing, where once it's closed, you know it's not opened. But in terms of making sure everything gets into the cart, I've seen facilities put cart holders on their carts with a list of everything that needs to go into that case cart. We built them on pretty much all our carts. I don't know. That doesn't. I don't know if that helps or not, or
Sure.
if you have anything to add, Lee.
No, I would just say the same thing. I'm a big fan of case cart locks because it's not reasonable to expect sterile processing to post a guard on duty outside the case carts in the OR, and so for those facilities that get that question or that frustration that their carts didn't arrive complete. And their scan history shows they put it in there. That's a great way to solve it. Another application of those case cart locks that have been very helpful for us, a lot of departments will have backup carts, like emergency carts in the OR for quick grabs for an emergency craney or a AAA cart. And making sure those get stocked and don't get robbed from is a challenge. And so one quick way to make sure those carts are complete is to have that lock on the door. And that can function as just a really quick visual cue, similar to how you would lock a crash cart and know that it's complete and still good to go. That way you don't have to send somebody to go inventory that cart every week and make sure it's still complete. You can just, inventory it in a second by seeing that the door's still locked.
Yeah.
Last one. Last one before we close it out. Somebody asked, does the biohazard sticker have to say biohazard on it, or does the clean dirty sign that they have on their cart, is that acceptable?
Hello, Vicky. I know her. So
okay.
Vicky Jen, Victoria. So a clean dirty indicator is fine on the just clean or dirty. That's pretty standard.
Yeah. Very good. Well, Calvin, if you and Lee don't have anything else to add, we'll wrap things up here.
All right. Thank you very much, Bobby.
Yeah, so much thanks to you guys. I appreciate it, and for having such a great discussion. For our listeners out there, if you have any additional questions that you think of related to case carts, feel free to reach out to Calvin via email or LinkedIn, both options you'll find in the speaker bio tool on the right of your screen, or I think we have it up there on the presentation. And then a little note for you, just as a reminder, you'll be able to access your CE survey for today's conference and a certificate at the end of the 6 conference sessions. Also, don't forget to access the conference's bonus CE content found in the resources window to the right of your screen. And so for now, we're going to take a short 15-minute break before the next session, and we are glad you're here, and we will see you again soon.